Okay, this is one I've been meaning to do for ages. I just keep forgetting. You know what my brain's like. But it's this concept of actually, the colour pink, what it means in the world, how it viewed in society. It kind of bothers me a lot when people get upset, annoyed, and up in arms over boys and men liking the colour pink, wanting to wear the colour pink, enjoying the colour pink, because people get up in arms about it. People get really annoyed and get really funny about boys and pink. I know like the gender wars are over and everyone's kind of moved on, but you still get those odd people that get really kind of uppity about the colour pink because it's a girl's colour. But actually, it goes much further than that. And I've known for ages that actually it used to be a boy's colour. There was a time in history that actually boys used to wear the colour pink, and it was actually generally used to be a boy's colour for like a long time. So I actually looked into its history a little bit. I didn't go into like the art world and its cultural significance, and because it's literally just all about art and how it's perceived in art and stuff. Because it was like, you don't need all of that. You can look into all of that if you want to, but I don't really need all that. So I actually just looked into the history of it and where it actually stands in regard to people, and how it's worn and how it's seen in society. And it's not surprising that the first thing you come across is the art world, because you got people like Homer and people like that, and all like the poets of the world, because of course they'll describe the colour pink in their ways of many, like in Odyssey you see descriptions of the colour pink in Odyssey, and in Lucretius, I think is how you pronounce it, and in his poem In the Nature of Things, The Nature of Things is his poem, he describes in great detail all about pink. There's a description of it as well. But yeah, there's a few others as well. There's lots of them where they actually sit and actually describe the colour pink. It's kind of interesting actually, but it's like, wow. But when it comes to pink and fashion, and pink in regards to people, it doesn't actually come into it until the Middle Ages. When it comes to pink and the fashion world, or pink in regards to people, you don't kind of see it take place until the sort of the Middle Ages, when you see, it appearing in women's fashion and religious art. Now, when I say that, I mean that it's actually women's fashion and religious art. It's not actually people wearing it. It's the art world, which is a whole different ballgame. Now, the nobles would wear things like crimson colours, which is more red. You would never really see them wearing a lot of pinks. They would wear a lot more reds, and obviously the poorer people, they wouldn't touch colours like that. Too vibrant, too expensive. They would be in a lot darker colours that were cheap, like browns, greys, blues. They could wear blues, but generally as a rule, poor people got married in blue because it was cheap, but not something they could wear all the time. So they got married in blue, and they always had a black outfit that they had for funerals. No, they didn't. That's wrong. They had a white outfit for funerals, or they had a white armband, because up until Queen Victoria, funerals were in white. I keep saying black because that's what we do now, but actually there was a point all through the Middle Ages and right up until Queen Victoria where we mourned in white. And I've always got to remember that. We mourned in white until Queen Victoria arrived. She mourned in black, and that's when it all changed. So there was a time when we mourned in white. Funerals and that, they took place and we wore white for funerals. So they would have had a mourning outfit or a white armband, depending on what they could afford. And they would have had their Sunday best. So, you know, they would have had that. They would have had a mourning outfit or a white armband, depending on what they could afford. And of course, their Sunday best. Other than that, but they would have lived in like darker colours. They would have lived in the browns and the greys and the cheap colours. But the richer people would live in the vibrant, really pretty colours that we see, the purples, the greens, the reds, the yellows, those, I don't know if they had yellow back then, but you know what I mean, those really nice, vibrant colours. But in the 13th and 14th centuries were, artists like Duccio and I can't pronounce this guy, but it's spelled Cimabue. I can't pronounce it. I'm hoping some of you know how to, but that's how it's spelled. And they portrayed the Christ child, and they both did it. They both portrayed the Christ child dressed in pink. And they did it to portray as a symbol of the body of Christ, because pink as a spiritual symbol is a symbol of togetherness and a symbol of love and affection, things like that, which is why we use it as now, because Raphael, which explains why Raphael, a bit later, in his portrayal of the Madonna in the pinks, has the Christ child presenting the Virgin Mary with a pink flower. He did it as a spiritual symbol of marriage between the mother and child, which has a reference to the bride of Christ, which is that was a reference to the bride of Christ. It seems a bit weird and kind of a bit mother and child, marriage between mother and child, but it's kind of a reference to the bride of Christ. And it makes sense that it's a pink flower because, again, it's this symbol of togetherness, love, care, affection. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that they did that back then. But then we get, and we're still in the art world, because then we get to the Renaissance, and all of a sudden you've got artists portraying human beings. Now, we all know it. How many times have we painted pictures, especially as children, where we want to paint white people? Now, I've done it myself, especially as a child. Oh, I need to colour my white people. What colour do you colour white people? Pink. We've all done it, and I can absolutely guarantee there are very few of us that have not coloured in a white person pink. When we were a child, what colour do you colour in a white person's skin when you're painting a picture or drawing a picture? You colour them pink. We've all done it. There are very few of us that haven't. When we're painting a picture or drawing a picture, sort of 10 and under, and I mean like childlike 10 and under, where we've gone, what colour do I need to colour my skin in? If you're white, you go, I know, we can do it pink because that's the closest we can find to our colour. But it started in the Renaissance, when they actually purposely coloured white people's skin, painted them as pink, because it was the closest they could actually get to the colour. So they actually purposely did it, and they did it with things like the St. John in the Renaissance pictures. It was actually kind of a clever ideal, and we still do it to this day. Most children do it. I have yet to see a child, I mean, I've got 5 sisters, and 4 of them are younger than me, and there is an age gap. I'm 7 years older than the next one under me, 8 years between the one after that, and there's 12 years between that and the third one, and the youngest one is the same age as my son. Well, there's 9 months between my youngest sister and my son. So, I mean, there's there's age gaps. We've all done it. I've watched my sisters do it. I've watched my nieces and nephews do it. You know, it's funny. And I've watched my son do it as well, which is kind of funny as well. Just like sit there and watch him draw pictures and like colour us all in pink. It's kind of sweet. It's really sweet and it's really funny, you know. And I've watched my friends' children do it as well. And you sit there and you go, why do we do that? We do it because it started in the Renaissance. We colour white people's skin in pink because that's what we think we have to do. But we never actually started really wearing pink until the 18th century in Europe. Now, in Europe, around the 18th century, it had started to become associated with seduction. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, because in France, in the 1800s, or in the 1700s, in the 18th century, the mistress of Louis XV, Madame de Pompadour, started wearing blue and pink to as a way to seduce Louis XV. She actually made it quite fashionable as well. And that is the funniest thing about this, is there's a way to seduce Louis XV, a way to become desirable to him. She started wearing blue and pink. And it set off a trend, like a fashion, amongst the courtiers of Versailles. And all the other women started wearing pinks and blues as a way to seduce and be, you know, seductive and, you know, and you just like, wow. It kind of spread. And you sit there and you think, that's kind of interesting. But over in England, it was boys who wore pink because men wore red uniforms. The boys wore pink. Now, as children, boys wore white. Children wore white. But boys would wear pink. Sometimes they'd wear pink ribbons. I always go that because I always associate ribbons with hair. But they would wear pink ribbons and other decorations that are pink. They actually would. They'd wear pink ribbons or other pink decorations, you know. But they would wear pink because men would wear red uniforms. And if men were wearing red uniforms, the boys would wear pink because, as far as they were concerned, boys were just young men. So the men wore red, the boys wore pink. And that is how society worked. Girls wore blue, boys wore pink. And society just stayed like that. Children wore white, but when colour got introduced, the boys wore the pink and the girls wore the blue because boys were just young men and men wore red uniforms. And if men were wearing red uniforms, the boys had to wear the pink because they were just young men. And the girls, they were wearing blue, you know. But and that kind of stayed, did it? Because actually there's a portrait of Queen Victoria with her children. And her third son, Prince Arthur, actually you can see him wearing both white and pink. I saw that picture. It's actually kind of cool. It looks really amazing. He's actually got pink ribbons on his white gown. It's really amazing. Yeah, you sit there and you look at it and you think, wow, they actually did just incorporate pink into their actual everyday wear. And it's actually kind of amazing to see it. So in 1850, you actually have Queen Victoria, her son was wearing pink as well. So it wasn't just it wasn't just the normal people, it was the royals as well. And in France, the Impressionists like Degas, they were actually started doing something else. They were Impressionist painters. Like Degas was Impressionist, and he started using pastel pinks in his pictures, and he started using them on women. So when he started using pastels on women, so his pictures and whatever else, there were actually pastel pinks incorporated in the women's dresses, so that actually you could see that both men and women in his pictures were wearing pink. And it changed everything, because by the end of the 19th century, both men and women had now started wearing pink because they took their cues. I think, oh, that's kind of interesting. I like that. So they started taking their cues, and then by the end of the 19th century, both men and women had started wearing pink. But then we get to the 1920s, and it had become really kind of popular for everybody to wear it. And nobody thought twice about it until we get to the 1930s, 1940s, and Nazi concentration camps. And this is where it got kind of dark and a little bit more kind of a turning point. And it is kind of interesting that they took a colour and turned it into something so dark. Because in the concentration camps, any inmate that was accused of being gay, they made them wear pink triangles. And it changed everything. And that, I mean, is why the colour and the symbol became, why it became a symbol for, gay people and gay rights and everything else. Because in the concentration camps, they actually made it you're going to wear this because we think you're gay. I mean, only the Nazis could do that. I'm not even going to go into what they did, because concentration camps should be enough for any of you. But what it did is it started this movement that the colour pink had a sexual undertone. And what that ended up doing is, by the end of the war, people started to change direction a bit. And all of a sudden, in shops and things like that, parents had started buying pinks mainly for their daughters and blue mainly for their sons. And all of a sudden, the whole thing changed. After the Second World War, everything changed. And the colour was no longer associated with both genders. It was, parents were going into shops to buy blue for boys, pink for girls. And they were no longer associating the colour pink with a boy. They didn't want to associate the colour pink with a boy anymore. The whole thing changed. So by the 1970s, everything had changed. And this shift of pink is for everybody had gone. And fashion magazines and other, fashion, all these fashion magazines that appeared, and everybody around the world has started to go, pink is for girls, pink fashions, pink this, and really selling this concept that pink is a girl's colour. Pink is for a girl, and really pushing this, feminine kind of beauty in pink, and taking away every kind of concept that pink could be a boy's colour, and associating it completely with femininity. And it's because of what happened in Nazi Germany, because of what they did. If they hadn't done that, given it this sexual undertone, that would never have happened. But that's the reason for it. And it became a symbol for gay rights. It became a symbol for, their movement. And it's not surprising, because that started it. They were punished because they thought they were gay, given this little symbol. So they used it to further their message. You know, and by that time, pink had been so feminized that nobody associated it with men. So if you were going to wear pink as a boy, you must be gay. Well, in reality, until Nazi Germany, everybody wore it. You know, by the 20th century, everybody was wearing pink and nobody thought twice about it. And it's kind of sad that even to this day, there are still people who can't get past this mindset that pink has to be a feminine thing. And you just sit there and go, well, actually, take a look at the history. You know, and learn to realise that there's a lot more to this than you think. You know, it's sad that just a colour can incite so much anger. It really is. That a colour can incite so much anger is really kind of pathetic and really sad. And people really need to check themselves. But I'm going to go, so I'll see you later. Bye bye.